G'day, Steve Morgan here, Fishing Monthly magazines, and we've got some new product at the bottom end of the motor range for Mercury today. It's their new tiller for their 40 to 115 horsepower outboard. And let's face it, tiller technology hasn't come a long way in many years. We've got the old Mercury tiller here, which is not adjustable. There's no choices for you as a consumer as to how you can set it up to your sort of boating. But enter the new tiller. It's the 40 to 115 horsepower version. It's backward compatible on boats that are SmartCraft enabled, and it has heaps of technology and heaps of ways for you to customise it to get it exactly how you want when you're boating. Let's jump in and have a look at the old tiller first to see what it looks like. Well, here it is. This is the 3-cylinder Mercury 40 horsepower 4-stroke outboard, and there's a lot of technology under that cowl, but move to the front and this tiller assembly, it hasn't changed for 10 or 20 years. One of the disadvantages of it is the fact that the ignition and the trim and tilt are remote, not on the motor. It's only available in a left-hand configuration, and it's a really basic tiller system. There's a tensioner on here which has got some basic tensioning. There's the gear shift lever, and the tiller itself is really short. And in applications like in this boat, I swing around and I'm always reaching back and down to try and drive that thing. There's no stopper to stop this hitting. I can't customise it to my way of boating. That's why their new tiller is so good. Let's go and have a look at it now. Well, here we go. We've got the same 3-cylinder lightweight 4-stroke Mercury here, but from the tiller forward is where the changes have really happened. And let's start at the front. It's got the power trim and tilt switch sitting on the front here, which is very intuitive. And whether you run this as a left-handed or a right-handed acceleration, that trim is going to do its job. If you want to swap it to left and right, this gear actuator and the gear tensioner, it's swappable as well. So you can run that on the port or the starboard side, depending on whether you want to sit on the left or right hand of the boat. And research shows that 1/3 of people prefer to drive a tiller with their right hand. Because it's centrally mounted, you can have the seat on either side. Moving further back, we have the troll control. And if you're into your trolling, and especially the slow trolling, you have 10 RPM increments on this troll control. So while the motor's running, you can actually up or down that RPM at idle from 700 to 1000 RPM. So there's really granular control of those RPMs. Moving further back again, you have your warning lights sitting here in the handle. And if the kill switch comes out, it tells you that. Low RPMs, low oil pressures, any of those engine guardian and warning systems that you have, you'll be able to diagnose those via the handle, and that's all on the handle here. You've got the kill switch and the ignition in the handle this time. The old one, it had to be somewhere else in the boat, so it's all included in this one handle. But the really cool thing about this long tiller handle is I can customize it to fit exactly what I want to do in my boat. So in a small range, I have 7 degrees of adjustment through this small knurl knob here, and that is for the fine adjustment when it's sitting right at its bottom level. But if I flick this switch in here, I can then flick this tiller up 1, 2, or even right up high, and I can have that sitting at exactly the height that I need to be comfortable boating, even to the point where if I'm standing up, I can be driving it really high. Flick it all the way to the top and back to the bottom again, and you can ratchet through those levels, and that's just this small switch here. When you're setting the motor up from left to right, you have 18 degrees of adjustment left and right of the motor. So you do need tools to do that. You need a small spanner to get in there, and you can take that assembly apart, drop it down in the right area, and then lock it off, because once you've got that angle set to your angle, it's going to be perfectly fine. One thing the guys at Mercury have thought of is this can ruin a day on your water. Someone takes your safety lanyard and your motor is dead. But they've got a spare clip underneath here that you can clip back on, start the motor, and you're still on your way. In theory, this is all great, but what we love to do at Fishing Monthly is take it out for a test. So let's get this on the water and see if it shapes up. Now, this tiller looks really good on paper, but for me, the real test is, can I set it up to suit my style of boating perfectly? And there's a couple of ways we can do this. Height-wise, I've got some micro adjustments at the lowest level with this knurl knob, and 7 degrees of adjustment up and down. I can get that sitting high, maybe a little bit higher, and at the bottom level, that's exactly where I'm going to be. The height is good for me, and this extra length in the tiller lets me sit here and have the tiller beside me. I'm not reaching back for it. The next adjustment is the really cool one. I flick this small lever underneath and I have 3 levels of height that I can adjust to. So I can ratchet it up once, twice, or even a 3rd time, and that lets me drive this tiller while I'm standing up. So from both the standing and the seated position, it's really easy. The next thing is the troll control, and it's a fairly simple operation. It's in gear at the moment, and all I do is I hold this down, and you can hear those RPMs revving up. I can set it all the way to 1000 RPMs if I want to troll fast, and I hold the negative side here, and it will drop all the way down to 700 RPM for that really slow trolling. Now, the only thing that I can't see now is the engine warning lights, because while everything's good, no lights are on. I can force the kill switch light though. If I pull the string, all of a sudden the motor stops and the kill switch light comes on. So the only feature I'm really not going to test today is this heated optional handle that they have, and even though we're in Melbourne, it's a pretty warm day today, but if you want to be the coolest, or let's say the hottest tiller on the block, that's an option you may really want to look at. All in all, it's a really simple and it's a really intuitive operation for this tiller, and I really love that you can get an old Mercury that's SmartCraft enabled back to around the mid-2000s and get one of these new tillers and bolt it on, and for me, that's a real winner.